We're going live no matter what. Here we go.
Oh, we're not. We're good.
Doing it.
Good old Gnate.
Gnate.
All right, gentlemen. I believe we are on the air. I don't know if anyone's in chat. I think so. Well, it says there's concurrent viewers, so. Here we go.
Hi, current viewer.
Hi, concurrent viewers also in this chat.
All right.
Oh,
so we've
Ken
got some
S.
awesome. Hey, Ken, how's it going? Give us a sound check if you wouldn't mind. I think everything should be okay, but you never know. All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining me this evening. How are you today?
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, so I just wanted to get together. This is my favorite panel guys here. No, not to count anybody out, but I have to say that I enjoy talking to you guys. And I thought, I haven't done a stream in a couple weeks, and I wanted to get together and just talk about what's going on. I mean, all of you have something going on, and I've been talking to you individually, and I thought let's get on here and see what's happening with the crowd, and get you to talk about some of this stuff. So if you just want to jump around, it's up to you. Whoever wants to jump in and start talking. I've got plenty of stuff. I will say at the outset, this is the inaugural voyage of my new Ryzen system here. So
yeah. Speaking of which, how has that been going? Building that with your kids?
Yeah, it's been great. So I had no idea if my daughter would be interested. She loves building things. She loves crafts, but I didn't know if it was going to be the type of thing where she'd just get bored with it. But it was cool. I had her help me put in an M.2 SATA drive, NVMe drive, and we had to take like heat spreaders off and some different stuff. So she got to use the screwdriver, and and then she did it. She put it all back together, and great. And yeah, it's been a really good experience. The only bad part.
You're muted, bud. Can't hear you.
Did you lose audio?
No, I muted myself because I didn't off in your. So I used the Wraithspire cooler that came with. And I thought, well, it comes with it, so why not just try it, see what happens. So I must have a bad one because I've talked to Michael and some other people that are, and it on my system was super loud, like, constantly cranking up. I'd open a tab in Firefox. So tried adjusting the fan curves in the BIOS and everything I could think of to try to get it to calm down, and it just wouldn't work. So I was like, my wife even said, like, I have to sit in here all day and I can't listen to that, so you got to do something. I went and found a Cooler Master cooler, non-RGB, and put that on, and it's dead silent. I mean, even right now my system's probably under doing this stream. I'm streaming on I think I'm on medium codec. Yeah, I'm somewhere between like 20 and 30% usage, and it's silent. So for whatever reason, that cooler was not working for me. The really exciting part was when I took it off, the chip came out with it. So
it was cemented on.
Yeah, they put so much, and that could be part of it too. Because the other thing I saw was the temps were over 90, which was no bueno. So when it came out, it bent a pin. It's awesome, brand new. It's day old CPU. So my wife was able to get that bent back for me, thankfully, and it seated itself, and it's fine. I have the new cooler on. Highest temps I've seen is like 68. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's 63.8 right now. Anyway, so all's well that ends well. I've got this beautiful new system. The biggest test of these processing power so far has been I did a backup of a fan break, that with a 2-pass 1080p 30 frames per second, that normally takes like 45 minutes an hour on my old 5 system, and it took 8 minutes. So
Nice.
yeah,
Wow.
good stuff. So yeah, I'm super happy. It's for just over $500. I've got basically a killer system that can.
What do you end up getting for a GPU? Out of curiosity.
I still have my GTX 970 that.
Oh, I was gonna say you went with a Ryzen NVIDIA build.
Well, no, I've had that card. So
Well,
basically,
no,
what I did.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I mean as far as like keeping the graphics card though, but which is interesting because not a lot of like typical Linux users. We're like, if they're going to go Ryzen, they usually do the whole AMD system. So it's interesting even still though.
Well, I had it. This system, I basically looked at it. It was my i5 system, but it was in a gigantic full tower case. They're all the same. I mean, I could get something different, but why? So basically, I just yanked the board and the cooler out of the old one and stuck this in. And the card is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong. Why would I go buy another one?
What was the spec of it? Is it an AMD, or what would you say it was? Your graphics card?
It's an NVIDIA GTX 970.
Oh, okay.
4 gig. It's a nice one. It's a MSI.
3.5 gig.
Don't get into the. It's only got 512 megs off share.
Good gravy. Yeah, I was afraid I'd be fading in and out. Let me turn on. I have a filter on. It's the gain filter coming to get me. All right,
Yeah, I'm in the process of you actually, Eric, listening to following you with the different forums. I've been following your build, and I kind of stalled mine out like the beginning of summer because I had other things to work on, and so now I just purchased. So I got my memory purchase, my graphics card purchase. I still got to get the CPU, and I'm looking at drives right now. I'm going to buy 6 2-terabyte drives for my storage, and I got to figure out how I'm going to chain them together because I don't know. I was just going to do like RAID 5, but apparently that's like so last decade or something, and so I don't really. I have to like rethink everything out now as far as the storage. So I have 6 2-terabyte drives and how to put them together so I have redundancy and have more larger pool. So someone's telling me like LVFM, logical volume format, whatever. And I don't actually know yet what I'm going to do. I'm still in the process of trying to figure it out. And every time I ask some specific questions in certain areas where I expect experts to jump in, dead silent.
Nate, are you going to be running the atypical distro, shall we say, for you?
What now? So there's only two distros I know of.
Exactly, and the one that you usually preach about is
no. I got Leap and Tumbleweed. What other distros are you talking about?
MX.
Well, yes, but they don't have certain packages in the MX repositories, so it wouldn't fit for what I need.
But no, are you going to use ButterFS? Because I know if you do a 5 or 6, there at one point, I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but there was a problem with RAID 5 and 6 in a ButterFS format. Under
certain conditions, yeah. So I've not gotten a clear answer because I know there's a guy he's a developer. Well, he works in server room. He's in the server sphere, and so he's a contributor to Fedora and OpenSUSE. He's a developer, and it's really funny because he actually has pulled all the storage stuff. He actually pulled all the ButterFS modules from OpenSUSE to put them in Red Hat because the ButterFS, in his opinion, is better than what Red Hat offers by default. And he's highly opinionated, and it's very funny to hear him talk. And then there's another guy who's an OpenSUSE developer. He actually has ported DNF from Fedora into OpenSUSE because he doesn't like Zypper. And so these two are going back and forth about the cross pollinating these technologies here based on whatever their particular needs are. And apparently both Red Hat and SUSE, you can use whatever you want. So it's interesting. But yeah, so ButterFS, I'm gonna do one giant pool of ButterFS somehow, but how the execution of it, I don't know yet. So I'm trying to figure all that out.
Got it. So, Adam, you had a stream on using Ubuntu the other day.
Yeah, Monday. Yeah.
Monday. And you had a really interesting thing come out of that. Funny enough, so you just happened to pick Ubuntu, and it just happened to be that you were going through setting up gaming because you had just installed it, and so you were setting up all of your gaming stuff. And Popey jumped on, and I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so I was using the daily image at the time, so I guess I would have I installed it Monday. So it was the daily image for Monday, and the beta comes out tomorrow, so it's about 4 days before the beta. And I noticed that when I went to install Steam, it failed, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I looked further into it, and it was missing 32-bit stuff, and I was like, oh, I could have sworn they solved this problem, right? So I thought, well, maybe they haven't got it ready for the beta or something like that, right? So I went ahead and, knowing enough about Ubuntu, that I went ahead and got around it by, I looked for, there's a command for print foreign architectures. And normally it would print the non-architectures so the architectures that are supported by your release, but aren't the one you're using. So in this case, it should have popped up i386 for 32-bit. However, it showed nothing. I thought, well, maybe
So,
they did a simple depackage add architecture i386 and then an apt update. Oh, there they all are. That's interesting. Cool. So went ahead and installed Steam and everything, and started my stream. And I went to and Popey was in there, and I mentioned to him my struggles and what I went through and what happened and all that, and he said he would pass it on to the desktop team. So the following day, I get a message from Popey so this is Tuesday, I get a message from Popey on Telegram where he posted in their Ubuntu discourse about like, hey, we had this issue, etc., just explaining the whole situation. And then I said, okay, I'll watch the thread. And then today, I get a message basically saying that their UDEBs were not, I believe they weren't up to date or something. But basically what happened was the package for apt setup in Ubiquity didn't have the 32-bit stuff enabled because it was still there from when they previously were not going to enable 32-bit before they announced that they were going to add certain libraries. So that became a critical bug and was fixed today for the beta tomorrow. So I basically, in doing so and doing the stream, the serendipitous nature of A, using the daily image of Ubuntu, B, streaming it, and C, Alan Pope being in the chat and explaining what happened, could have saved Canonical a huge PR nightmare. Because if they had released the beta and people installed it and 32-bit wasn't there, everyone would have lost their collective crap trying to figure out, like, oh, they went back on their word. They're not installing 32-bit like they said they would. And it would have been an absolute mess.
The conspiracy theories would be, just unbelievable.
Man. So and I asked Popey, I said, "Is no one else reported this?" He's like, "No, nobody's brought this to our attention." So in doing so, I just saved them a huge social media headache.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Gigantic one.
Well, I have to say, so besides that, which is amazing, and this is why testing is so important. The fact that you showed us how to set things up, like I've literally never done that myself. So the fact that you went through and showed it to me was that was really cool. So I really liked that as a like kind of a format, I guess. But yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. I kind of wish the gameplay had come out a little better, but it actually wasn't the encoder settings. It was the fact that it was display capture versus window capture. Because yesterday I tested the same encoder settings that I was using, X264 medium, etc. And with window capture, everything's 60 FPS locked, but with display capture, it's not. So just two different methods of capturing the game.
Gotcha. Well, that is super cool. I'm really glad you did that. You know, it's serendipitous to say the least that
Yeah.
that just sort of happened to work the way it did.
But man, bullet dodged. Like I've been thinking about that all day. I'm like, whoo.
You may have came up with a position for yourself there, like chief game tester or something.
But yeah, and speaking of game testing, I did contribute another thing today. So Lutris, if you're not familiar with it, is as I showed on my stream on Monday, it's a tool to install like games from other libraries. You can install from Steam and GOG and other things. The main use I have for it is for wine games, for Windows games that aren't included in Steam, right? So they might be Battle.net or Epic Games or something like that. And one of the games that I like to play is Guild Wars 2. Well, I'm on this new Ubuntu install, so I wanted to install Guild Wars 2 to play. Well, Monday I tried, and the Lutris install script was not working. And it came up with an error and everything, and I was like, okay, well, maybe they'll update it. I looked on the Lutris page for Guild Wars 2, and somebody had already said something like, hey, this is the error I'm getting, etc. And then yesterday I tried again and hadn't been updated. So today I wanted to install it again, and it still hadn't been updated. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna update it. So I went in, debugged the script, found what the problem was. They were basically pulling in DXVK when they should have been pulling in D9VK, and they were a couple versions old, and just made some changes to the install script, and then I tested it on mine, and it installed perfectly fine and enabled D9VK. Everything worked normally, and then I went ahead and submitted that up to the maintainer of the script, and hopefully they'll accept it and push it up. So just trying to, it's self-serving, obviously, because I want to play the game, but it helps other people too. So
it's almost like a mantra in open source.
Almost.
Well, it might be self-serving, but I think that's how a lot of things get fixed, right? We've been talking about kernel patches and the fact that yes, Linux has all these drivers built in and everything just works most of the time, but it just works in many cases to a point. And it's interesting what I think I'm starting to understand, and having Popey on the stream saying that he has a potato computer, and hearing from like Linux Spotlight, listening to Sean and just other developers who are using much older hardware. Now, of course, if they're crunching code and they're just using text editor, like I get it, they don't need a high-end system. But you running into this problem and no one else reporting it, obviously there is a need for people with higher end hardware. And I even had made the suggestion to Adam last night on Discord, like, if the cost of getting a developer a really good laptop is, let's say, $1,000 to $1,500, and you had like 2 or 3 core developers on a project, that seems like a really good use of money to get those guys some good hardware. And you think about like GoFundMe, people will do GoFundMes for a couple $1,000s here and there for anything. And I would love to have a project be upfront enough to say, look, we don't have modern hardware to to test these things simply because we can't afford it, and that's fine. I'm not expecting them to go. They're already dedicating their time. I'm not going to expect them to go out and buy new hardware as well. But geez, if they would just say, like, if I had a newer system, I could build these things and test these things in a different way. How about we do a GoFundMe for this guy and get him a decent system? Like, I would totally throw $20 behind something like that for a project that I believed in. I mean, that's nothing. It's a no-brainer. So, we always talk about how can we help. We dedicate our time, or we can, volunteer to do documentation, or if you're a developer and all that. But I mean, if practical matters, like having better hardware means that there is a better result for all of us, then that just seems like something that makes sense.
Yeah, and something as simple as like a 4K monitor that they may never have experienced. Like, you can get a 4K monitor for like $200, $300. You don't even have to go like crazy high end just something that's like basic but it's still 4K that they can test against.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing with like your point, Adam. Even a decent like Ryzen system, as an example, like, you know, we were talking about Ryzen earlier. I had the Ryzen laptop I have. It was $600, and that's the 2700U, or you know, so, and that's with a dedicated GPU. They're not as expensive as things used to be anymore. And if projects need that, I think if they're upfront about it, that would really help out tremendously, because you can quantify what a project actually needs. It's not always coders, it's not always, you know, all the other stuff's great, don't get me wrong. But at some point, modern hardware is kind of nice to have, so you can actually test on, you know, something newer than the last 10 years worth of stuff you haven't tested on.
Well, and you know, not to belittle anyone's choice in computing. And again, if you are happy with what you have, so I know a lot of people will go out on eBay and buy a $300 ThinkPad, which is perfectly serviceable. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But, you know, when you think about adoption in gaming being such a huge advantage right now, I think for Linux on the desktop in general, if there is no coverage and just random people are finding problems that close to, you know, a release, again, I'm not pointing fingers or blaming anyone. I'm just saying, like, it is the type of thing that if someone in the organization at some point through the development cycle looking at these things on that type of hardware, you'd think they would find it.
Yeah. I agree, because it's like you just mentioned, you know, going out on eBay and buying a $200 or $300 ThinkPad or EliteBook, you know, whatever. All my recordings are done on like a 7-year-old EliteBook, but that's because, and I still use all the dedicated GPU stuff on Linux because I want to see how much you can really get out of it. And it's been interesting because a lot of the Windows games that have been ported to Linux have much higher requirements than, like, if they're native Linux builds, are much higher than like their generic Windows counterparts. Like if you look at like Tomb Raider, it's like an 880 or something is like the min spec for Tomb Raider. But if you go to like Linux, it's like I think it's a 760 minimum. It's really weird seeing some of it. So this has a equivocal to a 480, and I've been able to do Tomb Raider at 720 at 1080p 60, but I have to use the Windows version through Proton. Linux version plays fine, but I get about 30 FPS.
Yeah.
So wait. So okay. So the Windows version on Linux runs better than the Linux version on Linux. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Proton,
but that has to do more with the hardware that is tested against. So like Windows had an earlier development, so like it was natively built on Windows. So obviously there's going to be a compatibility translation way of doing things that the game wasn't built for, or initially. So they're I don't want to call it hacking the game to make it work, but it's really kind of what porting is.
It almost sounds like it wasn't. Maybe the Linux version wasn't optimized correctly.
I know, because no, I'm not going to say that, because like if you have the hardware that they built around, like tested around, it's fine. It works perfectly fine. It's just a difference in development. It's like developing the game 4 years later when it comes out on a different platform. Like it's different. So like the recommended stuff that you're going to run into is different. And yeah, Linux has that whole like 7,000 different Linux distro thing. Pro and con.
That's really, but still with Proton, you're kind of going through a sort of compatibility layer, right, to make it work.
They're
taking the way Wine works. It takes APIs and says, "Oh, you're looking for this."
Yeah, it's making it's turning them into Linux calls.
Right.
No, so, what I'm saying is the way that the game is tested and built around, they only use a certain subset of hardware. So that's why they say, hey, these are the mins, these are the maxes, specifically around that. So like I think when Ferro does a port, initially they weren't supporting any AMD hardware. So like they only have a very limited subset of stuff to test against. So so if someone decides to run, a newer Linux release on 4th-generation old GPUs and it works, awesome. But that's not what they're not gonna shoot themselves in the foot by saying, "Oh, it works on this." Is basically what I'm saying.
I would think though, since they're using, I would imagine some sort of an OpenGL library, right? Or now there's Vulkan and some other things I don't even know what they are. I'm not gonna pretend like I know anything in that regard, but I would think that if it's if they're targeting OpenGL, then it wouldn't really matter what the card was behind it. Or am I way off on that?
You want to say you look like you have something to say on that one, Adam? So I'll let you.
So yeah, the OpenGL
Yes, I'm way
feature
off.
set, the OpenGL feature set per card can be very different.
Mm-hmm.
So you can target OpenGL, but you have to target a specific feature set. So like 3.5 or 4.3 or 4.5 or something like that. And so each card only, because of the nature of the GPU, it may only support certain functions because they're all essentially just, functions of the GPU. So one might have arbitrary names here. One might have a shader for, I don't know, reflecting glass, but the older version might not have the shader for that type of reflecting glass. So if the game is built with that shader in mind, only the new card is going to work.
Yeah, and it's like if you get the old card to work, that's awesome.
but you'll probably have graphical glitches or any number of problems.
Yeah, because it's like when I turn on what is it, the tessellization or HDR, whatever. There's one of the settings where like it just glitches out the graphics totally.
Yeah,
I'm like, it doesn't really surprise me. But I found it interesting trying to test Linux games on older hardware that is not technically supported, even on the official native Linux builds, because a lot of the stuff does work. Like I play Tower of Time, is one of my favorite isometric action RPGs. Doesn't support a 480, but it still runs at about 45, 50 frames a second at full resolution and all that stuff. So
still playable.
Yep.
Yeah, to say the gaming situation has improved on Linux is an understatement and then some. I remember years ago when I was a bigger gamer than I am today. That was one of the biggest reasons, and it probably still continues to be. Like, if you're into Fortnite, if you're into competitive shooters, things where you need an anti-cheat, it's still not something you're going to be able to do. But by and large, Adam, the games I'm seeing you play and others, it doesn't seem like the limitations are there anymore. So, and there was also that. There's also that episode 9 of Linux for Everyone with the Proton guy or with the crossover guys. And just how they spent so much time on Proton and how Valve has really stood behind Proton and made this a reality, and how one company putting their money behind a project, you see the impact of that. Like, it is, the ripple effect is unbelievable.
It is seriously, because Eric, I'm with you. Like, I remember when our AAA game was
Urban Terror.
No. This was going even further back. Quake 3, Middle 10.
Oh, yeah.
When you had the Linux version, you know how I bought that game? I bought it at a dollar store. That's
good deal.
Yeah, I wish I kept it.
I remember seeing it at a software, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You remember those? Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, so I don't have any of my old games because GameStop used to buy them back. So I would take back my games after I was done playing them, and then ultimately usually regret it, like whenever I want to play them again. But
especially now where retro gaming, like collecting, is a big thing.
Yeah.
Which I still, I used to own so many game consoles that like nobody has ever heard of, and I don't have any of them anymore.
Yeah.
I think the last It's before the terminology AAA came about, but the last big game that I bought native for Linux was Descent 3. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Nate, when you get that new build, we'll have to remedy that problem.
So
Actually, my current computer here can do a little. I mean, I can play what is it? Something ballistic overbite or something like that.
Ballistic overkill, Bach.
Overkill. Yeah.
Well,
fine.
In fairness, I was able to run that at 30 frames a second on medium details on a Surface Pro 2.
I got an AMD GPU in this guy, so I mean it was okay.
No, I mean, but yeah, gaming's come a long way. I was gonna say Quake 3 and Neverwinter Nights were the two like big AAA titles that we had. Then Loki Soft ported a few other games. Then we had
Loki.
What was the other game? Linux Game Publishing for a while.
Iculus did it. Ryan Gordon did some.
Yeah, Iculus. He was actually one of the ones that helped with Loki Software.
Yeah,
it's funny seeing. It's still funny seeing some of like the Loki code stuff kick up sometimes, and you're like, nostalgia trip.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like gaming goes, Borderlands 3 just came out not long ago, and I've been playing it on Linux since day one. Like, and that's a brand new AAA game, and it runs perfectly fine in Lutris. Latest Wine, latest DXVK, no problems at all. It stutters because compiling shaders is a pain, but after you've experienced one like a new shader at least once, you don't have the problem anymore. So like you encounter a new enemy or new weapon or something like that, for the first I don't know like second or two that they do anything, there's a stutter and then it's smooth. So presumably if you play the game long enough, then it'll be smooth.
But is that a Linux only thing, or is that just how the game renders it?
Yeah, so in Windows, all the like shader stuff is pre-compiled for you, like when in the Windows binary. But with DXVK, it's all compiled as needed. So you can download like pre-compiled shaders for DXVK. So like Overwatch, for example, in the Lutris side, will give you a big shader cache already. And so that will speed up, it kind of eliminates that issue, right? Because in Overwatch, it's really bad because if you go in and you're trying to compile shaders while you're trying to play in a match, you're going to lose, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff going on and everything, you're just gimping your team. So people who have already done all that hard compiling for you, it can then upload their, like host their shaders with the install script. So you pull those down and you don't have to do that.
Gotcha. So Nate, what do you got going on? I know you got a new article out there that people are enjoying. You're working on a podcast. You got all kind of stuff going on. What's up, man?
Yeah, actually, so more excitingly, I had my 8-year-old install his very first Linux distribution on a crappy old Acer Aspire one. I shouldn't say crappy. It's decent. Netbook. And this little guy, I don't know where I got it. Probably someone probably just gave me hardware because that happens. I get old. I collect old things apparently. And actually, aside from just telling him how I wanted it partitioned and what to put in for his username, he actually was able to do it all by himself. So the next time somebody complains about OpenSUSE's got a hard installer, I'm like, an 8-year-old can do it. But
got him.
Yeah, got him. Yeah, rip. I wrote like a little article, I guess, on my little crap site. Why OpenSUSE is fantastic. Reasons why OpenSUSE is fantabulous in 2019. So it's kind of a little, I don't want to be too serious because I don't like serious things to be too serious. And someone from SUSE contacted me through Discord. I gotta make sure I say the right terms. There's some terminology clashing going on in my head right now, and said, "Hey, just so you know that what you wrote is circulating around SUSE right now on their internal, bulletin board. I don't know what it's called, internal thing. I said, apparently it's being talked about. Like, well, that's kind of cool. That was not my intent. I just wrote it for me, and because somebody in the discourse who works on OpenSUSE was saying, I don't even know why I use OpenSUSE. I'm like, well, let me tell you the reasons why. And so I wrote an article on it. So, but yeah, that was kind of exciting.
I gotta read that.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a great primer on if you don't understand sort of the basis of what makes OpenSUSE interesting, some of the sort of architecture and capabilities. It's a really good sort of introduction to that. So I could see why people would be interested in passing that.
It's very surface though. It's very, I don't want to.
That's okay.
I would say it's low resolution. It's a low resolution article.
Yeah, but that's important. Those kind of things are important because like people aren't necessarily looking for like what, like when they're asking like what distro should I run, they're not looking for just OpenSUSE. They want to know, why does this guy love OpenSUSE, right? Like it's not that they want to be told what to choose. They want to be convinced that's the right choice. And so when they hear like, obviously stupid articles like top 10 reasons to use Ubuntu, but people love those because it's like, I need a reason to use Ubuntu. And that's kind of the same idea, probably less crappy, but just the idea is like, well, people might know you as like an OpenSUSE fan or an OpenSUSE advocate, and like, well, this guy's like neck deep in OpenSUSE. Like, why does he love it so much? That's a very valuable article to read.
So, by the way,
and
go ahead, Nate.
I started out with talking about ButterFS because that is kind of developed. There's kind of this meme developed around it, and it was a bad implementation by another distribution, which that's not important who, of using ButterFS. So some data was lost, and that meme just kind of propagated itself for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so it's like, SUSE is not using it because it's unreliable. I think they have a lot of business customers, so I think to use it to their detriment would not be good business sense. So
yeah. I wanted to go back to something that Nate said earlier about apparently he likes to collect hardware, and just show something really quickly here. He you guys aren't going to see it in Zoom, but it's the picture you posted in Discord last Saturday of all of your stuff. I don't know if you flip over to the YouTube preview or whatever, but it's the wall. So I have always assumed that Nate had like a Nate cave, a man cave of hardware, and so he gave us photographic proof last week. So I mean, we could have fun sitting here playing like Where's Waldo and picking out all the different hardware.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you see right there, because I got the YouTubes up. Next to I'm actually standing next to the Commodore 64 now. So the three screens, that's my main Linux machine. And then I have an older machine next to it. And then my Windows, which it's a Windows 7 machine. And I found a desktop that looked like it was broken. And so that's the desktop I use for Windows, because to me, Windows is just broken. And yeah. And then I got this Commodore 64. Underneath my Linux station, there's a Apple IIc. It's the only Apple computer the only working Apple computer I have now is an Apple IIc. And then a Commodore 64 there. And yes, everything works. And the
Amiga, the NES down there.
Oh yeah, there's an NES, and below that's a Super NES. And then below the Commodore 64 is actually, it's a refrigerator external pantry drawer from a Whirlpool refrigerator that I pulled out of the dumpster when we toss things. So I pulled it out so I can have a nice little. It's got like a easy self-close thing that I just kind of adapted to the desk, because I like to repurpose garbage. But then an Amiga 4000 T next to that, an old Commodore 1084S monitor that sits on top. I did so much coding on that old monitor, and it still works great. But yeah, that was back in my teens. And then below that, an Amiga 600, which I didn't learn until recently actually that it was the crappiest Amiga ever built. Like someone told, I learned that it was like the worst one, but I loved it. You know, I didn't know any better. There wasn't the internet to tell me that. And then the Amiga 1200 below that. So, then Atari 2600.
To me, the thing that's so impressive about that is that we've all had those things over the years, a lot of that stuff, right? And so few of us ever thought to keep it, like I said about the games and everything. I mean, we just, as we move, to a new house, or we move, or there's a reason that we just say, I don't want to be encumbered by this, or I'll never use it, or whatever. I mean, I say that, and I still have a VCR within eye range with a whole box of tapes, and and then 1,000 DVDs in my living room, and CDs, audio CDs in my living room, and I've got old formats and things. But I look at that stuff that you have, and I think, man, I wish I had that TRS-80, and I wish I had my first Dell tower, and I wish they never broke. I just replaced them.
Yeah, it was always a money thing for me, right? It was like, well, this brand new cool thing just came out that's like faster and better, but the only way I can get this new thing is if I sell my old thing to make up for most of the cost of the new thing.
Yep.
And so that's often how it worked for me.
So for me, I pretty much held on to things until like I just couldn't use them anymore. Like my previous laptop, which was sitting to my left, was it a Dell D630? It was a Core 2 Duo I bought in 2007. Man, was that a screaming machine in 2007, I tell you what. And actually I used it steadily for 11 years. It just never broke, and I just never had I just like, well, why upgrade? My server does most of the work right now, so what do I need I don't need more storage. I don't need what I need it for. And then pretty much it was the NVIDIA drivers on there kind of started getting wonky. Like the later releases from NVIDIA kept getting worse. And so then I kind of put on Nuevo.
Yeah.
Nuvo. Okay. Well, now I'm on record for sounding like an idiot. Great. And then pretty much it's the reason I upgraded was because I had I couldn't get batteries that would last more than 3 or 6 months. Like they just kept conking out on me. I'm like, well, I can't have that. I need a battery. I need a laptop that can have a decent charge. And that's the only reason I upgraded, actually. I mean, I still use it now because my main machine's not always here. That goes with me. So I'll come down here, I'll do stuff on my old machine. And it's got 8 gig of RAM, and it runs Plasma. Of course, an OpenSUSE, because
why not?
Because, well, that's just what I do. And so, like, it's still incredibly usable. So it's like, I don't even know, I mean, for most of what I do, it's all documentation stuff anyway, so still fine. But
I actually just got my oldest machine that I still have is an early 2014 MacBook Air, and so it's not that old, but I guess that was like 5 years ago. So but I got rid of, I had a bunch of old components that I had sitting around in like my closet, and I got rid. I couldn't find, like, I couldn't get a decent price for anything on eBay, so I just gave them to Goodwill. And I don't know who goes to Goodwill to pick up graphics cards and stuff, but maybe somebody does. But there was like a Radeon 6870 in there, GTX 670 was in there. I had a Phenom 2 board. What's that?
When did those come out?
The 670 was, I think, 2012 maybe.
Yeah, 2012, 2011, somewhere around there.
And the 6870 was 2011, I think. And then
heck, for me, that sounds like it's brand new.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super old, but you can't really get much for that. It's not vintage, so it's not worth anything, but it's also not new enough that anyone cares about. So it kind of falls into that, like, you couldn't give it away kind of area.
You have to enjoy using it, right? I mean, that has to be.
Well,
it's like, I could sell the 670 for what? I mean, realistically, is somebody gonna pay like $30 or $40 for it? No, they're gonna be like, well, why would I spend 30 or 40? I could put that toward, a 1050 Ti that's gonna blow it out of the water for like $200, right?
Yeah, but for some people, it all depends on because This is actually the funny part. Sometime in the next few months, I don't know when, but Ryan and I are going to be doing some budget building,
Mhm.
and we are giving kind of like a hard budget. We want to see the type of machine you can actually build for that budget. And when we say budget, and I say budget build, I'm not talking like Linus Tech Tips type videos where you have a $10,000 CPU that you break.
Yeah.
I'm talking like realistic, like every day, like, hey, I have this budget. What can I do?
Mhm.
And we're looking at like the 300, 350 range. So we're doing eBay shopping, Craigslist shopping, all that
Man,
to see what you can do. So,
I could
but
have set you up with a quad core Phenom 2 and a
nice.
GTX 670, about 8 gig of DDR2 RAM. I could have set you all that. I'd have given it. Hell, I'd have just given it to you. But
Yeah.
that's what I did. I just gave it to Goodwill, right?
Yeah, shit. Whoops, sorry. Stuff happens.
We'll be okay.
Yeah. But
It's PG, not G. You're all right.
Yeah,
I'm allowed one.
You're allowed
I got
one.
rid of
That's
a
it.
lot of got rid of a lot of stuff like that. And I'm okay with it, you know. And I look at like Nate's setup. There's like the internal like nerd part of me is like, man, look at all them screens and lights and buttons, you know. But like the rational like adult in me is like, that is an absolute mess. Like I don't think I can handle that much. Like you know, there's certain people that I'll see like on a webcam chat or something. I look at their back in the background, you know, or Twitch streamer or something, and the people who like don't clean their room or like have like I can't really. All I see is like stuff on the wall, right? I can't see the rest of your room. But like some people would just have an absolute mess.
Be
Like,
glad.
it actually like bothers me. Like I get some kind of like anxious feeling. Like please, like you have to help yourself. Like come on.
Do you see how everything is dark right here? See
There's
what
a
you don't
reason.
see, which was in the picture.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
There is there's another system I'm working on. It's a tumbleweed system. It's actually going to replace my PF Sense box, and when I have to finish it, there's another system that I just have to install it now and configure it, like configure it for the DMX lighting.
Mhm.
It's another box for controlling like DMX lights,
Mhm.
and that I've set up. So I was like, I got to kind of get these things out. I could have probably done it tonight, but someone told me there was a stream going on. I could talk to my nerd friends. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I know, right?
Priorities, man.
Well, it's like,
and you know, not to be outdone by Nate. So to prove Adam's point, I'll show his setup. Have it.
Oh yeah.
And it'll be a
Adam's
couple seconds.
setup?
Yeah, my setup. It is a stark difference.
So
from yours,
this is when someone takes like a lot of care and attention. We also have a very special guest in the sitting in the chair there, by the way. I don't know, Adam, if it's up on YouTube yet. If you, but,
yeah, I don't see it yet. But
okay, so it's a picture of McGee and
there's a desktop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that picture.
there we go.
Yeah.
So that's my setup. Like the switch in, the hue bridge, and all the power bricks are all actually command stripped to the desk, so they don't move. I bought this new monitor arm. Got my mic over there. Like,
So Adam, you don't like the whole like wires all over the place?
I did when I was a teenager, but
and didn't care.
Apparently, I'm still a teenager.
Yeah, I just it's not that like I outgrew it or like some pretentious idea like that, but it's more just I found the value in like an uncluttered workspace that actually helps me like think and get things done, because I have like really bad ADHD, and like if everything is not, if it is a mess, it affects like my ability to work, my ability to think, my ability to create and things like that. So
the funny part is that there's a sign that says this room's a wreck, which is
so that's a joke from like I got that from my parents. Because my room was perpetually a mess as a kid. You know, ADHD, right? You don't clean your room. That's just a pretty common thing. So, you know, they would always give me crap about having a crappy room, and I've had that from that a long time. So,
well, I was going to say, speaking of old hardware, Adam, I've been playing with this old MacBook Pro that I have. Ended up finally putting a better SSD in it and a few other things. Man, you would not believe how much of a difference an SSD or a decent SSD, let me rephrase that, can make.
Yeah.
The
best part about that picture was McGee, by the way. But yeah.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, that and the pretty screen's not gonna lie.
They're 27-inch 4K. They're pretty nice.
I know. That's why I said. Putting Mac OS on unsupported hardware has been interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, for those that don't know, I like I said, I have an old MacBook Pro that I've actually got Mojave on, which I believe El Capitan was the last supported version, I think. But either way, it is very much reminiscent of installing Linux on a Mac. You burn a USB and call it good. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Because you're hacking-toshing an official Apple computer, so you can technically install Mac OS, but Apple won't let you.
Steve says McGee looks like he's been caught doing something. Yeah,
he's always in trouble, like, because the chair is the stepping stone to the desk, and I don't mind Kiki up on my desk. She's fine because she doesn't chew my cables. But McGee, on the other hand, loves to chew cables, but he has an interesting quirk that he'll only chew cables that have large amounts of electricity going through them.
Ah, yeah, that's
so good. Like if they're power cables, he's like, "Oh, this is a thick noodle. I'll eat this." Yeah, but no,
it's like he's flossing. Actually, he's trying to keep the pearly whites white.
Thankfully, he's missing like almost all his teeth because of dental issues he's had, so he can't chew through it reliably. So at least there's that. But he's surprised me before, so this is not a surprise I want. Yeah, but Kiki doesn't chew, so she just comes up here and like loafs, and she loves that my monitors, the new monitor stand, because she can like go underneath the monitors and just kind of pop out the front. And like she loves that.
Very cat thing to do.
I think we need a picture of that at some point.
It's gonna be kind of hard to see because she's a black cat and like black desk, and
that's right. We'll see the eyes. That's good enough.
Yeah, you will. The big yellow eyes.
Mr. Matt, what do you got going on this week, my friend?
This week a lot of work, a lot of the normal job, a lot of the 60+ hour work week, unfortunately. So. 10 hour days and 7 of them, so doesn't leave a lot of time for sleep or other things, unfortunately.
What's that?
Let me ask you,
what do you do again?
I work retail.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So it doesn't matter when you're salaried, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter how many hours you work in that gig.
November's not far away.
Luckily, I don't work that retail.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
well, I still deal with retail, but not in the way like not Black Friday kind of retail. So I still deal with the holiday stuff, just in a different way. But now, like, I've been messing around with the Mac Pro. Been trying out a few different distros on the weird Sony thing that I got. And I sent Ryan two pieces of interesting hardware that DasGeek will one will give him a WTF because I'm not sure what he's going to think when he opens that.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yes, that is perfectly fantastic.
Okay, yeah.
And the other one will be a MXM. I want to say it's a K3100 Quadro that is a replacement for a EliteBook E760W that I'm going to be sending him because supposedly you can actually change out the GPUs in the 8760s, and that'll give it a newer GPU because the GPU currently in that machine overheats anytime it accelerates at all. So I'm going to see what Ryan can do with that. I'm just like, yeah, here, have a project. and I think I spent $35 on that card. Like it wasn't expensive, and the lovely thing for hardware he's going to get is a 21x9 Ultrabook.
21x9 Ultrabook?
Yep, it's a 14.4 21.9 Ultrabook.
With like a 13-inch screen or something.
I just sounds all right.
It's a 14.4-inch screen that's 21.9.
Hey, if you want to watch like, cinema movies, then I
Yeah.
guess that's a good one to have. But
Well, that and
Yeah.
the Harman Kardon speakers are really, really good for like actual like.
I guess that was kind of the whole point of the.
Yeah, but no, it's a Toshiba Satellite U845W, and literally the thing is,
You have
I used to have it.
you have it like you can.
No,
Well,
I
if you had it,
no, I don't actually have it anymore. I sold mine a while ago, and it's just an interesting project because I want to see what Ryan's face is going to be like when he opens this little wafer board size, like surfboard looking Ultrabook, because it does not fit any normal like actual laptop standards. Because it's not a 13.3, it's not a 15.6 or a 15.4 or a 17.3. So it's like this weird, like the things is lengthwise as long as my 17-inch Elite Book, but it's this thick.
Gonna need like a rifle case just to fit it in.
So
Yeah.
What is it? Toshiba what?
You just type in U845W.
The W for wide.
Yep, pretty much.
It sounds like a U-boat classification, like a number.
Let's just say that the resolution is 1792 by 768. I'll let you try to figure out that. That is it's interesting. It's that Ultrabook. I'm not gonna lie, having used it because I used it for over a year and a half as my daily driver. That was the one thing that when you use Unity on something like that, you can see the value in it because you don't have a lot of the vertical space.
Yeah, I was thinking that because you have all of that space that you could do something horizontally and have the bar and it would make no difference.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, Ryan's no idea what to do with it.
Well, he loves that stuff, so I'm sure he'll come up with some fun thing to do. But I appreciate your attempt to troll him. It is.
I would never troll Das Geek. Always.
Well, I mean, it's rubberized. The front of the Anderson is rubberized. That's kind of cool. So actually, a 21.9 display. That is. Oh, I mean, it's not a bad looking machine. I mean, it looks like maybe it has some sort of like a disability, maybe a little bit, but it doesn't look.
It can squash maybe a little bit.
Yeah, but I like it. I mean, not too bad.
So, on a different subject, I know the Biddle challenge is MX Linux. Has anyone here? Okay, Nate obviously has. He's in with the MX team. And
I'm like this, except I'm over here. See, I'm over here.
I am struggling to. I installed it. I looked at it. It's XFCE. I installed KD Plasma, which was like 512 maybe, because it's it's Debian.
LTS.
And I sort of stopped there. I will spend. I'd like to spend like an hour or so just looking at the tools and stuff before Saturday. But I'm struggling to find the motivation. I don't know if you guys done much with it.
I have zero interest.
Yeah.
So you're probably like, what's the big deal about MX? What is the big deal about MX? Why?
Enlighten me.
I was gonna say, isn't the new release have better high DPI support and a few other things?
Yeah, it's 414. XFCE 414. So it's a I mean, as far as like weight of Linux distributions, it's targeting older hardware. I mean, originally MX, like if you look at it, the panel is to the left side of the screen. Because originally it targeted netbooks, so everything was built around the idea of having a low spec system. So like, well, what's the big deal about it? I could run, like OpenSUSE with XFCE, right? So why not just do that? And I think the appeal of MX is it's like a real nice, great on on new hardware too, but it's such a great distribution for old or esoteric kind of hardware. Just like it just kind of runs. I didn't have to fiddle with it at all. If you have newer hardware, chances are you probably want to take advantage of that. Although now XFCE does have like translucency and it's a little bit fancier now, and it uses GTK3 for all the core components. So, it's like it's really just it's targeted toward older machines or people who don't want to have a rapid upgrade cycle. So it's not for enthusiasts like yourself, Eric, who just drop some coin on a fancy new rig. Probably you want to take advantage of some of those features, and MX is not really targeted toward that. It's targeted toward a more of a highly pragmatic user, and it's to me it's almost like the polar opposite of OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. It's not rolling. It's not on the leading edge. Not going to say bleeding edge, on the leading edge of software that's coming out. But it doesn't have to be. It's not really. That's not what its target is. It's more for a pragmatic. It's a pragmatic, mature user. And so, since Eric, you're a young lad, so that's probably why it's not really.
Obviously, that must be the explanation.
But
it's XFCE. I have to say that, and I know that it's a bit of a polarizing thing for a lot of people. Look, MX is loved by many, quite obviously, and for good reason, because they do focus on stability. They're using a stable desktop environment. They're using a stable base in Debian. They've got these great tools to help people administer their system, which I can see the parallels in why you might have an interest, because OpenSUSE does the same thing with Yast and some of their tool set as well.
Right.
So, and that also kind of bridges the gap between, or a topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is newer users and, how they can use a distribution and distributions catering specifically to them and giving them tools and capabilities to manage a system, maybe in a way that they're more familiar with, like coming from Windows or Mac, where most things are in a control panel and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I can completely see the value. It's almost like when we did Endless, I see the merit. I get it. It's not something that I have an interest in personally, because it's just doesn't suit me, but it doesn't mean I discount it as being worthless, or, that argument where, there's too many Linux distributions. I don't really buy into that at all. There's certainly a lot, but a lot of them also have a lot of innovations and do things like MX is doing, where they're building tools that others can either adopt or, get ideas from, and that's very important.
So Dennis says, does pragmatic equal noob or old or both? And I think it could be either. I think it's really like what are you doing with your hardware? What do you want to accomplish with your hardware? And I have it's a 2006 era Dell Optiplex machine. So it's a Core 2 Duo, so it's 64-bit. And I put MX on that, and it's my living room for my media machine. And it's just there, and I just don't really have to think about it. Although I am doing the testing on that one, the hardware testing, so I can make sure that the instructions I write out and such on the, whatever I do on the wiki site, I make sure I test it against that. So, it runs very well for that. I put KDE Connect on it, and used the terminal for using it, because there's not a good UI, I think. And so and it runs. It runs great. It's just that even though it's running Netflix, which is that does tax an older machine, but it does it very well, and like extremely well, and it's it's buttery smooth, quite honestly. And then now that the MX or the 4.14, there's no screen tearing at all, so it's a substantial improvement over the MX18, I would say. And there's some kind of like a simplicity. There's almost an ineffable quality about MX that I really can't even articulate very well. But I just I install it, and I like it. There's something.
Do you keep the bar on the left?
Oh no, I'm not a savage.
I'm just curious how many people actually leave that as the default.
I put on the bottom, and I get rid of the session management button as well, because I don't want it there. It has a very simple password. My kids know how to turn it on, and also a lot of our like memory work and such is synchronized with it. So if having the audio memory work, it's just synchronized with it as well. And using SyncThing, and it just works great. I don't have to think about it. Every once in a while I click to do updates, and I just don't. It's a machine that I can forget about, if that makes any sense. Not to say that MX is something I should forget about, but it's not. It's not tumbleweed where I got at least maybe once every 6 weeks or so I got to make sure I update it. To make sure it's a rolling distribution and everything. So
yeah.
And Eric, sorry, to answer your question, I keep it on the left.
Do you really? That's interesting. Okay. I knew there had to be at least one person.
Of course it's going to be me. No, generically, that workflow is more from Unity. So like the left makes sense to me because I spent so long using Unity. So.
Sure. I get it. It's just there's certain the clock and there's certain pieces of it that just look wrong to me visually. Mm-hmm. Functionally, I don't have a problem with it being on the left. For the longest time when I ran POP, I had the dash to panel, and it was just on the left where it normally would be, and that was fine. Like it doesn't bother me to be over there. There was actually so part of the MX Linux thread in the Biddle Discourse forum. Steve, Mo West's son, actually wrote a utility for his. He started programming the bash RC configuration tool over a year ago, and they're including it, or I guess going to include it, so that you can set like fancy prompt and stuff like that. So that's a user, contributing a tool that's going to get included in the distro, which is, I think that's really cool. I mean, not just because it's his son and, he's getting started and gets recognition, but the idea that, kind of like how Adam, earlier was talking about contributing back to Lutris, where the script wasn't working. Yeah. So, and again, back to the development of any given piece of software, it goes as far as the people doing it take it, and then as other people use it, then they extend it. And obviously, the people who are listening to me right now, who are in the chat, are well aware of what open source is. But this is the type of thing that I want, I guess, for normal people. I'm going to put that in quotes, right? Normal people who don't understand computers. Don't understand, like, if you try to have a conversation about open source. I mean, this is probably one of those ways that you could actually convey that concept to someone, where, he had access to the code itself. He could take it, look at it, and understand how to build something and then improve it himself. And the ability of someone to do that in open source is really what drives it forward. And it is some sort of magic in a way. It really is, that people will take their time, dedicate their time to doing that sort of thing. And it is one of those things that once you understand how that works and that we all benefit from it, I think enriches the experience and really adds a level of a type of value that you're just not getting from a corporation. Like you don't have that sense that Windows or Mac or anyone producing software, proprietary software, has that same sort of mindset of like openness and people. You can report bugs, but whether or not they actually fix it, you have no control yourself. You cannot.
No communication either.
Right.
Can I make a parallel of I think why I like MX Linux? And this may not fall on I can't relate to you whatsoever, but this is how I was thinking about it just as you were talking. So OpenSUSE is a rather large distribution. It's one of the old guys. I kind of look at it akin to going to a mega church. Have you ever been to one of those where just it's huge? You know, there's like tons and tons of people, but they have all these different little programs for kids and these like community involvement events and all these things that they just do that just to really, you know, you can find your place and do whatever you want within this giant, you know, conglomerate. Well, MX Linux is like going to one of those little country churches when like, you know, the pastor pats you on the back, says, hey, well, welcome, blah, 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 you know, and makes you feel real welcome. I kind of feel like MX is that smaller community where everybody's really friendly and it kind of gives you a hug. And in OpenSUSE is maybe a little more, I don't want to say standoffish, but it's a little more mega. You know, there's a lot more bits and pieces to it, and you know, you can just by spending, you know, a week, you'll meet like a lot of different people, you know, in the project and all the different aspects of what they do. And maybe there's a part of me that likes the big and I also like the small. I don't know. That's kind of how I look at it. Maybe that's a crazy analogy, but that's just kind of how I look at it.
No, and that is the small distribution, right? I mean, we have a lot of people who really love Peppermint. Peppermint is not large. I mean, I don't know what their install base is. It's not insignificant, but it's certainly not, you know, anywhere near, you know, a major distribution. Doesn't make it any less powerful or interesting or good or refined or anything. I mean, it's great every time I've ever looked at it. It's just, you know, XFCE isn't my thing. But it's the same thing. I think it's a good analogy. It's the difference between being part of a gigantic community or being part of a smaller one where it's more intimate. And some people really appreciate that type of intimacy, and or just that approach where it's you know, a little more focused. And that's the thing about a smaller distribution too, right? So we talk about Ubuntu or OpenSUSE or any of these larger distributions. They're serving a lot of masters. They've got a big audience. They've got to accommodate and account for a lot of different people, a lot of different use cases. Smaller distributions can be more focused. They have that luxury to sort of say, like, this is what we are, this is what we do, you know, and the people that appreciate that gravitate toward it, and then they have their sort of fan base of people that will keep using it. So I mean, I wouldn't not recommend someone try Peppermint or MX or something like that. I think they're well maintained, and the people that are behind them are very dedicated. So
when they're based off of, well, actually, I'm not sure with Peppermint, but I know that, you know, MX is based off of Big Debian. So, but you know, and Debian can be a little bit of for some people, a little bit of a daunting installer. It's a little bit more. Reading is fundamental when installing Debian, right? So yeah. MX makes that a lot easier. It's a very easy installer. I mean, it's so easy my 8-year-old could do it, although he did OpenSUSE. So I'm sure my 6-year-old could do it, really. I mean, it's just it's a very, very simple, and it's approachable, and it's just nice.
Well, someone said MX was to Debian kind of like how Manjaro is to Arch in a way, where it's sort of like, you know, not that it's that challenging to install Debian, but you still have a lot of stuff to sort of do on top of that. Just like if you install Arch, it's not that hard to install. Once you install it, to get a, you know, full desktop system, you're going to be doing some extra work. And so maybe MX, the parallel there is that they're doing some of that for you.
So is MX treated it by the Debian community the way like Manjaro or Antergos was, and all the, like, it's like the Arch folks were very like, that's not Arch, so don't come here for help because that's not Arch. Like, do the Debian folks react that way when it comes to like MX? You know, like, it's based on Debian and it's using Debian packages, but not Debian. So
I don't know because I've not gone to any Debian forums and said I have problems with MX.
The last time I went to a Debian forum, it was a mess. Yeah.
Was it quiet? Was there
No, it wasn't quiet. Quiet was the opposite.
Oh, but I've never gone to a Debian forum. I've installed Debian many times. I've never really had a problem so much I've had to ask for help in a Debian forum. And I installed Debian on a PA RISC system, like an old Unix workstation.
I was going to say the best way to describe what Adam's talking about, think of Arch button Deb. More or less.
RTFM kind of stuff?
Sure.
Partially, among other things.
Well, now you're being a little cagey now. What do you mean?
It was a very adversarial experience.
It was very, very, very confrontational because there's an ideological end to Debian that it does not exist in, say, MX or various other ones. So there tends to be that particular vocal group, shall we say, that populate most of the Debian forums, at least in my experience. Yeah. I don't know.
So TempCore in chat's asking how big of a difference is MX to just vanilla Debian?
They have some of their own packages. It's using the same core.
Well, so how would you explain it?
Franken Debian by its nature, right?
It might be a little bit of a Franken Debian. I honestly can't stand the technical details on that. I could well, I don't want to spin up my VM and for risk of running out of memory right now.
Okay, Nate, try to explain it as a user instead of as someone who's actually contributing. That might be an easier way to explain it, like how it might be different, because you did Debian straight Debian not that long ago.
Right. So honestly, it's a you don't have as many options. It's a simplified, streamlined installation process, and you go through some very simple steps, like an Ubuntu or a Mint. Well, I shouldn't. That's the install is nothing like it, but in the same vein, it's a very simple step by step, like doing your taxes with TurboTax, kind of installing your distribution, and then boom, you're done. So it doesn't, and then it reboots, but it doesn't. It's not like Debian. You go through all this myriad of steps, and you're kind of playing choose your own adventure when you're installing Debian, right? So what route you go down in the beginning kind of guides your path toward the end.
Well, and also, sorry not to interrupt, but the amount of choices that you have when you go to Debian's website and try to find the right installer for your system, whether or not it has the proprietary drivers, whether or not it is a net installer. I mean, there are so many different variations that it can be very challenging to find exactly what you're looking for. That was my recollection from testing it.
Right, and since I've used Debian on and off since the beginning of my Linux journey, it's not, everything on the web used to be way more convoluted, 17 years ago, 18 years ago. So it's not like they just haven't changed from their convoluted ways from, if you looked at the site from 2002 to today, it's pretty much the same. It's really not that different. So if you look for, yeah.
So just as an exercise, I have a snap of a Mosaic browser. I'm going to attempt to go to Debian.org, see if it'll render in the ancient.
The sad part is it probably does.
Well, it may not. I mean, they might have changed some of the.
No, you're giving Debian too much credit.
Well, my early history.
Oh no, it's HTTPS, so Mosaic didn't support that.
Well, my early history with Linux was Debian from a practical standpoint. So when I started, it was more about servers, and I didn't even really consider the desktop. And at that point, I needed file servers, I needed network servers, stuff like that. And I tried, Red Hat, and I tried some other different distributions, Mandrake and ones, and those aren't really necessarily server based. So when I got to Debian, and put it on, some hardware and was able to configure everything I needed, and it was stable. I had a file server that I think ran for 7 years, I want to say. Like, I didn't do anything to it. I mean, unless the hardware failed, that thing was never going to die, which is incredible. I mean, and so from that standpoint, the use case for Debian, the stability of it, their release cycles, that all makes perfect sense to me. And today I would still consider. Adam, didn't you say that you spun up a? No, it was Michael. He for the Discord server for Destination Linux Network. For some reason, he said that he has it on Debian instead of Ubuntu. He didn't tell me why yet. I bug him about it. But I totally get why, because on the server side of things, and even okay, so if you had a production workstation, let's say you were a company that sort of had a workstation setup, like Debian would not be a bad choice because it's a known good. I mean, is not going to break. So that strength is inherent for a lot of us who are trying to be pushed closer to the newer releases and the bleeding edge. Like it's an inconvenience. Like, to me, the fact that it has an ESR release of Firefox drives me bananas, because I want Firefox. I don't want an ESR. But stuff like that in the right situation makes perfect sense. So,
right.
What do you think of the MX installer? It's perfectly functional, and I mean it's interesting. It includes some options that other installers don't. So I thought, they've really taken hold of the question was what's really different, and the difference is that it's the Debian base, but they've really taken hold of the system tools, the administration side of it, very much like, again, OpenSUSE has in that regard.
Right. Made it simple. The only thing I don't like about the installer with MX is when you put in your username. Like I'm used to, like, you punch in your name and then your username separately. It's kind of one of the same on the installer. I mean, that's a silly thing to get hung up on. But that's the only thing that, like, I don't care for as much. But I mean, it's for my purposes, it's not that big a deal. It doesn't matter. So, but I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think the install has any issues with it. I mean,
no, I don't mean issues at all. I just mean that because everybody uses Ubiquity, or they use Calamares, or there's just 2 or 3 that literally everybody uses. And the fact that they've just decided, yeah, we're going to do our own thing. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, because it's a holdover from Mepis, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
And basically,
I don't know.
Basically, from what my talks with Dolphin it's a holdover from Mepis, and one of the key differences is that if you install stuff within the live session, you can actually transplant that into the actual install onto physical hardware. So, like, if you install an app, that app actually gets transplanted to when you actually do a live, like, real install.
Right. And that is kind of neat. So if you start playing with it and then you decide you want to commit to it, then all your settings will transfer to the install. That is actually, it's pretty slick. I mean, I've never seen that in a live. Maybe it does exist. I don't know. I've not seen that before in a live install. So go to live media and install from there. But it's
well, and at the end, I like how it asks you, do you want to save your settings?
Right. Yeah.
And you could say yes or no. Like, it's up to you. The idea that they even just thought, hey, maybe someone might or might not want to, so I think there's definitely things like that. Yeah. But the idea of the user friendliness, I guess, and maybe it would be, I don't know. To me, it seems like it would be much more user friendly than just I guess, Debian itself. But that idea has sort of been resonating since Adam brought that up, about a month ago on Biddle with Nessa, and testing out Ubuntu, and how would a regular user experience that first experience.
But also, installing the NVIDIA drivers are simplified in MX as well.
Yeah. So I've been trying to myself think about that more and more. And so I put out a video earlier this week about how to try Linux without changing your current operating system. And it's really just a very, very in-depth look at how to use VirtualBox more or less on your computer to test out, and then what is Linux and which distribution should you try and what are desktop environments. And I really try to be as high level and approachable as I can. And it's not always easy being a technical person, having been in IT, and I take for granted so much of my knowledge is what I consider to be trivial, I guess, not to make it sound as though non-technical users. I don't. It's difficult. It's anything that you have subject matter expertise in, and you have practiced it for decades. It's can be hard to separate yourself and step back and say, how do I explain this to someone in a way that it just would make sense? And I have no idea whether or not I actually hit that target, but I liked the idea. Like, it took me literally days to make that video. It took me a day to record it because I kept going back and looping over and doing different takes. And then it took me a day to edit it all. And I think I'm happy with the end result. And if I can help 5 people, test Linux in a way that is non-destructive, lets them experience it and play around with it and potentially see the value in it for themselves, then I feel like it was a worthwhile effort to do that. And it also just made me think more introspectively about why I use Linux, why I like it, what made me want to use it in the first place, and why someone might want to use it now. And I enjoyed it. I want to keep doing stuff like that. And I know that a lot of people are of the opinion that most people aren't ever going to try that. And I agree. But what I'd like to believe is that if someone goes looking for that type of information, that they can find something like what I did, and many others too. It's certainly not like the first person that has ever made a video on how to use virtual. But I'd like to believe that if there's even just a small percentage of people right now who are considering Linux, that there's a way for them to find that type of content and give it a try. So,
And I can't imagine what it would have been like if I had all this available when I first tried Linux. Like, it would have been such a different experience. I think I did it just because A, I was an iconoclast, and B, I was stubborn. So,
Yep.
like, those are kind of my main motivations for even trying Linux. And like, here I am, I have a career in Linux now, so it's kind of awesome. But at the same time, like, man, if I had videos and forums that weren't full of a-holes and other things, man, that would have been so nice.
Well, the Mandrake, later Mandriva, those forums were filled with really friendly people. One of them that was like super, like, he's a community guy, Adam Williamson, I think his name was. He's out, he works for Fedora. He's one of Fedora's. He's a big guy in Fedora. He works for, I think, Red Hat now or something like that. I don't know, but I don't know. But it's funny because he helped me out a lot in my early days, on that forum and talking in IRC. Is IRC? Wait a minute, I don't even know now. Maybe it was AOL Instant Messenger. I can't remember. I know I was using Pigeon for that. Remember Pigeon? Anybody remember Pigeon?
Yeah, okay. I remember it was Game before that.
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know. But anyway, so I remember like having numerous conversations, and people are just like, my Linux experience has always been, wow, all these people are so nice. All these people are so nice. Then Reddit came, and I'm like, whoa, where do these people come from? Like, this is not my Linux. So
yeah, no kidding.
So I mean, yeah, because I mean, like, actually that was years ago. That's actually when I was when Mandriva was fizzling out. I was looking for another Linux home. Basically, that's when I went to OpenSUSE, although I dabbled with them in the past. That actually was one of the reasons I didn't go to Ubuntu, was because I felt like it was not as friendly of a community as what I was used to. So,
Matt, what do you think about new Linux users? Is that a thing you think is real or you're muted?
I think it really depends on the person. It's kind of like the miscellaneous use of like the year of the Linux desktop. If you are new to Linux, that's your year of the Linux desktop.
I love that. Yep.
It's the same mentality I take. Like Popey mentioned that he doesn't even doesn't force feed it anymore. And for me, that's kind of the mentality I take, because at the end of the day, it's about the apps. So like one of my contents is the way I switch people is you just kind of redirect what applications they might use. So really at the end of the day, the underlying OS doesn't matter. So like if you switch it out for, say, if you get them on Kdenlive and OBS and, Audacity and a bunch of other stuff on Windows, are they going to care that you change the underlying OS if you still have Audacity, Kdenlive, OBS? No, they're not. And if they have the thing that says internet, and this is kind of where Adam's experiment really kind of rings true, because what was the first thing she tried doing? She tried doing everything that she would have done on the prior platform.
I'm still so surprised that she didn't even care about the look, themes, and I don't know why I expected a new user to be so focused on appearance and to have her, and maybe that's just her personality. I don't know her personally, so but I can imagine setting my wife down or some random friend in front of it and having them say, well, it just looks so different, and being sort of lost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now they like the look wasn't really that important to her, mainly because I don't know, like she's an artistic person, but like when it comes to a computer, she doesn't care what it looks like. She wants to do things.
Yeah.
Right. Like like she's never been like won over by like an Apple product. Like, oh, look how amazing it looks, the beautiful interface or whatever. She's just like,
it makes her smart.
Can I run whatever on this? Right.
Yeah.
Some people, like when they buy a car, a Toyota Camry's fine. That's it gets me from point A to point B. I don't really care. Okay, so maybe I got it's starting to rust because I live in the north, but it works, mechanically sound, so it's fine. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and it's not a bad analogy, because a car is a car. If you know how to drive a car, you understand the fundamental basics of it. If you know if you use a computer at all, you understand that there's a file manager and a web browser and settings somewhere, and all of those sort of basic things. I guess I just assume that people will get tripped up on that before going towards do I have my apps and stuff like that. But hey, this is the kind of feedback that I think is valuable for all of us to hear and see, because again, once you immerse yourself in something, and I've been using to the point now where if I use Windows, it's almost painful, and not because it's bad, it's just so different. And that, to me, funny enough, is what hurts the most, is that all of the things that I'm used to in terms of being able to customize and set things the way that I like them, when I use Windows, I can't do any of those things. I can change color, I can do some very basic things, but I feel like I'm so limited in what I can do with that system. So I guess I just assume that people would have the reverse response whenever they come from that system.
So I wrote on the Biddle blog, I don't know if you read it, but I have more parts to do to this when I have time, about how Linux makes computers personal. And one of the analogies I did is like eggs. You can have eggs many different ways, right? And I feel like Windows, like in the late 90s, when Windows kind of like pretty much became, the Roman Empire of computers. To me, it's like dry, processed egg food that you have to kind of choke down or smear it in some gravy just to be able to like get it down the gullet. That's to me what Windows is like. It's very It's for the masses. It's in that regard, it's like inexpensive to keep and to produce, and for everyone, it's palatable to the lowest common denominator, and it has its purpose. But if I want to have my eggs Benedict, or or poached eggs or something, cheesy eggs, you can't have that in the Windows world. I feel like there's nothing personal about those eggs. I'm getting my analogies crossed, but what I'm saying, like there's nothing you can make it. You can't make it your own. I feel like in Windows, you can change the wallpaper. Woo! You have like 3 different anemic themes for widgets. At least Windows 7 did anyway. You can have like a silver or a white or a dark, I think, at one time. But it's just kind of like it's just.
But you know what?
That was Windows XP.
But you know what? The reason why none of that really matters, because if I go out and I buy a piece of hardware, or if I want to find a piece of software, it's gonna work. And that's
right.
That is the key differentiator. I'm gonna have to go to some website to download a driver. I'm gonna have to maintain that software myself in terms of finding updates. So all of the advantages of a repository and a package manager, and all of the things we take for granted, setting up a Linux installation, like distro hopping, especially nowadays. I mean, most systems are going to install in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It's going to have 85% of what you need. You're going to go out and get the last mile type stuff. And literally within a half an hour or an hour at the most, you've got a completely working. Versus my last experience on Windows, which it took me the better part of 2 or 3 days to get everything installed the way that it needed to be. I had to go get the drivers. And again, that's not something anyone ever does. Adam rightly pointed out to me whenever I complained about that. He's like, yeah, but who does that? Nobody. You buy the computer. The manufacturer already has all the drivers on there. You never touch it. People don't go to the manufacturer website and download a BIOS file or an updated driver, or unless it's got the Dell update utility or something like that bugging you about it.
They come to me and say, hey, can you fix my computer? And it is no easier doing it on Windows than it is in Linux. I support some people's computers because it's broken. Like, okay.
But people see them as disposable. My in-laws, for example, they had an older laptop that had a spinning disk drive, and it was 5400. It was just a slow system, and it was pretty unbearable. I mean, it took forever to boot. And let's be fair, like we're seeing the case where stuff is running better on Linux in Proton because there's less overhead in those on a Linux-based system than there is on Windows. There's less memory usage. There's less background stuff happening. We're starting to tease this out and prove these facts of just being a better hardware platform for that, performance-wise. If only stuff was supported in the same way. So they gave me this laptop because they're like, we're just going to throw it away. We're going to go get a new one. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with it? Well, it's slow. And it was unbearably slow. I put an SSD in it and I cleaned it up and it was perfectly fine. But that's the mentality, is it's an appliance. It's basically a piece of plastic that they use as long as, that they can use it, and then they'll just go buy another one. And it comes with Windows. It's everything they expect and know. So yeah, that whole Linux, year of the Linux desktop, we've seen some infiltration with Chromebooks in certain situations, but for the most part, I think, especially people like my in-laws, like they're just going to go buy the next Windows computer.
I actually saw that Windows hit 900 million devices for Windows 10.
Yeah.
900 million
900
devices.
million Windows 10 devices.
Wow.
Almost a billion.
Wow.
That's a little more than Linux.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Yeah. And for good reason. So
yeah.
Oh my. Well, we're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes. I'm happy to keep going. I was planning for 2 hours on the nose, so I don't know if you guys wanted to steer the conversation in any way.
So I just loaded MX into GNOME boxes.
Yeah. How'd it go?
And I realized it was MX18. So then I re-downloaded the right one, the 19 beta 2.1, I think it is. I gotta say, like, you're talking about the installer. Like, there's some questions in there that I, as a power user, appreciate. Like,
Mhm.
my Samba work group name and domain
Oh
and things
yeah,
like that. Like, the services that start on startup, and like I can see those. Those are pretty useful for people who know what they are, obviously. But like, that's nice to have that, kind of set up beforehand, right?
and then the little notes around it, like don't worry about it if you don't know what this is.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Right. So if you don't, so then it makes it very approachable for a user, for like, let's say someone who's newer in Linux, maybe not real techie, but they have maybe curiosity. It's very
Mhm.
approachable. Makes it extremely approachable.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good one.
I definitely, and I appreciate that whole, um, if you don't know what this is, because I've always taken that same approach, right? Because all right. So when I started in IT, I was a very young man, very optimistic, very enthusiastic. And so what I thought people wanted when they were asking me for help was to learn how to do it. And it took me a while to realize that they didn't care at all how I fixed it. It's like, it would be like having a plumber come to your house and have them explain how they're fixing your toilet. Like, you don't care.
I actually would do that.
Well, look, Nate, you and I would, right? I mean, but that's a special breed of person, and a lot of, so through those years of coming to that harsh reality, and actually being very disappointed, because I always thought it was like, cool, like, you know how to fix it yourself. Don't you want that level of self-reliance? No.
Nope.
And
but I can understand.
Their brain
I can
only has so
understand it,
much
but like,
space.
like I don't want to set the heads on a 454 Chevy or motor. Like there's like torque pressures you have to have on the bolts, and in order you got to bolt, they got to bolt the thing down. I don't care. Like that's I don't want to mess with an engine because if you don't do it right, they go boom. My computer doesn't go boom.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, Eric, because I've always kind of thought that too. Like, wouldn't, like, just because personally I was more interested in like how these things work and all that, and when people would show me stuff, and I'm just the kind of guy who wants to learn everything, right? Like, I want to know, like, things about how to fix an engine or how to cut down a tree or whatever the case may be, right? And most people aren't like that because I get it. You only have limited time, limited focus, limited space in your head for things, and some people have a lot more pressing things in their lives, like the person you're probably helping, in IT, for example, right? Like, let's say it's I don't know, an accountant or something at a company. They're too busy thinking about balancing the books and not getting hit by the feds. They don't really have time or energy to figure out, oh, this is how a print spooler works on Windows or something, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's like Nate
that's kind of
said, if you're
person.
either that type of person or you're not, right? I don't
Yeah.
limit myself to just the knowledge that I have. Like, even if I'm never going to be an expert in something, the idea that I have some general knowledge, and a computer is a tool that these people use every single day. It's not like I'm asking them to learn how to do carpentry randomly or something like that. They've
But the same
asked
thing
me a
applies to
question.
a car, right? You don't
Yeah,
necessarily know how to repair a car,
but I have
but
very
you can
strong
drive a
opinions on
car.
that. I have very strong opinions on the fact that you should know how to, like, check oil. Like,
Like
if
basic
you,
maintenance, sure. Like
yes,
oil, tire pressure, change a
right,
tire, that kind of thing. But
right.
like, if your mass airflow sensor is malfunctioning, like,
Look at
okay,
you.
you shouldn't really have to know that, right?
Have you ever hooked up to the OBD2 port?
Just gonna ask.
I've ported a few times. I've also had a beater car that's had a lot of problems. So.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Got to clear that check engine light again.
yep. Yeah. I'm about to sell it, but it's too late to clear it out.
Right, right.
But no, it's like I don't expect that out of people. Just in the same way, like I expect you to know how to navigate the internet without getting phished or without getting malware. But I don't expect you to know how a registry works or how to,
Yeah.
set up something complex. Or I don't expect, my mom. I expect my mom to be able to not get viruses, but I don't expect her to be able to stand up a file server.
or to be smart enough to ask you a question, right? If she doesn't know
Correct.
something.
Yeah. That's also a skill a lot of people don't have.
Right. I mean, probably every IT person in the world had this, and probably still does. The whole, how do you find a problem, an answer to a problem? And it's go to Google. Did you find the answer? Yes, no. Like,
Yeah.
the Google
Yeah,
flow
the flow
chart.
chart. Yeah.
And it was absolutely true. And I mean, it still kind of is. I don't have the inherent knowledge that I know and understand all computer systems in the world, but I do have the wherewithal and the understanding to go and find the answer.
Yeah.
And
I definitely don't think that people sending you "let me Google that for you" links is the right way to go about solving a problem.
No,
right?
no. And I would never do. I think if the whole Nick Burns, trope of like being a jerky computer guy, like I never went down that path because I don't like a lot of things that other people do like, and I'm not going to. I don't expect them to belittle me because I don't have that knowledge or interest. And I certainly wasn't going to do that to them because it's not fair to them. They, fine. You don't like computers. You don't want to learn this stuff. It's not my place to make you feel bad about that. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. But if you want to learn, if you had an interest, and there were a couple of people that took me up on it, and whether they were just humor, probably.
It's hard to tell, but
right, because I was like the young enthusiastic guy, and they're like, okay, what? Yeah, explain it to me. Great.
Yeah, because I mean, we have like field techs, right, at work. They are at the different schools, and they're primarily, just fixing like occasional Windows problem, mostly, replacing printer ink or, plugging in a classroom like network switch or something. Nothing hyper complex, but a wide amount of work, but not necessarily depth of work, right? But then, like, they come down to our central building occasionally. They have to pick up switches from the network team or something like that. And they'll come over to my desk and say, hey, and they'll be like, what's all this? I'm like, oh, it's, my servers, it's Linux. They're like, yeah, I need to learn that Linux stuff. You teach me, it's like, yeah, I know you're not serious at all about this. So like, like I just say, yeah, sure. Just, come down and spend a little bit. I'll talk to you. But they never do, it's just like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, yeah, you should learn. Here, let me show you this. It's just like I'm gonna just go ahead and just continue the pleasant conversation until you leave.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. It's you recognize it for what it is. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, but like 18-year-old me, I'd have been like, dude, you're about to see the best thing of your life. And like slam the monitor in their face, right?
You're not going anywhere for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, it's like, strap in. You ever heard of a red hat?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yep, you sort of learn that over time, no doubt. Oh my goodness. Well, and so to the point that I was making for MX, like, it is nice that they give you the ability and the choice in there, but then if you don't know what you're doing, like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna leave that. Well, I will definitely take some extra time and look at MX amongst the 1,000 other things I want to do this week. So Nate, I had done a video also, just popped into my head about Gecko Linux, and I wasn't sure at the time when I made it what the deal was, and Serge actually replied to me and said that he knows who it is. It's a gentleman in Poland, apparently, who welcomes feedback, and I guess it's just a one-man thing. Like he puts it together. But I thought that was pretty interesting because the same parallel that I just made with Debian about not, when you go to Debian's website, not being sure what to download, I kind of fault OpenSUSE a little bit for the same thing, because it's kind of confusing when you go to those pages for either Leap or Tumbleweed to know exactly what you should be downloading. And so the idea that this guy put together these, desktop environment centric downloads, it kind of just gives you everything you need as a starting point. It was pretty cool to grab a couple of those and spin them up and see. Yeah.
I think that it makes going to OpenSUSE an easier transition, or like someone who's coming from Debian, from Ubuntu, that has these different spins of Ubuntu.
Yeah.
So it's kind of taking the the work out of figuring it out through the OpenSUSE installer, which I can understand would be, it's not as straightforward if you want something that's not GNOME. Why don't they have GNOME top building? Plasma, GNOME, or XFCE desktops. So,
well, and I also liked, so unlike MX and Manjaro and other sort of systems like that, you essentially just get a stock OpenSUSE system with some custom theme. And so what you end up with is what you would have gotten from the official installer,
right.
with almost no, that I could see there's no custom packages whatsoever. It's literally just theming.
It's the community Pacman repository that has like the multimedia stuff. That's the only thing you actually get, like, it's just installed by default or whatever. It's available by default. That's really the only real difference with Gecko. Actually, I noticed, I don't know if you saw it, but on your Twitter chain, someone said unfortunately it's the ISOs are a little bit old. I don't know if you noticed that. And I replied to that. It's actually someone who's on the OpenSUSE board, I believe. I could be wrong about that. And I said, well, it's a testament to OpenSUSE because you can update it. That still works. Even though the tumbleweed version on there is like really old, it'll still update. So that's.
And I know you can't blame him. I mean, it's one guy, so it's obviously not something you can expect someone to. But unlike, so I guess the main reason, the most important point about me saying that it's the stock, and to your point about updating it, is so many distributions, smaller ones that do these customizations, if they don't keep up with it and maintain it, then you could have breakage and problems and stuff down the road. Whereas this guy took a very pragmatic approach of saying, I'm just going to give you the stock system. Yeah, it's going to be a little out of date, but ultimately you're free to maintain it and update it, and you're not going to have any problems because all you have to do is just run. It'll be a big update to start, but hey, Tumbleweed regularly has gigantic updates anyway. So, it was one of those things where it's just kind of like I know I had heard of it, and I just never really paid attention to it, and for some reason I popped into my head and I thought, let me go look at this again, and it's actually really cool.
Yeah. I think the static version is on 15.0, which is still supported. It's just not the current one. And Tumbleweed is Tumbleweed. So, I mean, it can, unlike Arch, it's actually resilient that you can actually install it after being 6 or 9 months out of date, and it'll still run.
I almost don't see the use case for him supporting Leap in a way. I mean, maybe that's unfair. I guess from my perspective, when I look at that, like if I want a system up and running, I'm probably going to lean towards Tumbleweed anyway.
Yeah, I think the issue with Tumbleweed though is because it's pretty fast moving. If you have something that has a kernel module that doesn't roll as quickly, then you're going to have something break, like VirtualBox or NVIDIA, and unless you know how to maneuver your way through that, it's going to be a problem.
So, I didn't have any of those issues. No, I didn't. Admittedly, I did not move into it. I didn't make it a primary system. So there's a lot of stuff I did. Okay. Well, I just, and that's another little initiative I'm kind of undertaking, is just looking for those types of distributions that I know I've looked at before and just never really paid much attention to. Linux Lite is another one that I keep suggesting that people try. It's XFCE, but their implementation of XFCE might be my favorite that I've ever seen. And
what is its base?
I believe it's Ubuntu LTS based, and they do a lot of custom. If I remember correctly, whenever I found it, I went and looked at the website, and like their business model is to create like custom embedded type systems. And so they're using Linux Lite as their sort of base to do that. But then they have the general release that they have out there for people. So I'll probably end up looking at that one soon. But it's interesting to me to just go and sort of, I think we all kind of focus on what's on DistroWatch and like what's in the top 30 or whatever. And there are more things out there. I think
Sure.
deserve a little bit.
No. See, the ones that we need to be looking at are the ones that have been submitted to DistroWatch.
Any come to mind?
Not right off the top of my head, but that's always an interesting place to look. If you want, they're usually the ones that are pending approval or any of that stuff. That's where actually Drago OS was for Thomas.
That's what I thought you had in mind.
Well, no. Like that's just as an example of what I meant, though. Like it was. There's a few other distros that do some odd things. I don't know how else to say that. And then there's some like the way DistroWatch does stuff is generically weird. Anyway, but yeah, if you want some like different odd takes on distros, I'd recommend not just looking at the top 100 or the list of distros, but also the ones that have been submitted for review.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought to do that, and I will do that. Thank you. All right, guys, we're about 2 minutes from the top of the hour. Any final thoughts from the panel?
I was actually reading a very entertaining string from Dark One here with someone in the chat. Not sure if there's room for that discussion.
Yeah, no, that's a loaded discussion that I didn't want to take. So let's not talk about that.
Well, I think you have a video on that too, right? So if folks want to check it out,
yeah, go to the channel. I will not post links. We are trying to keep this family friendly.
Dark One's he's a naughty boy.
All
the time.
I was
he's more like
my content is non-family friendly.
I was gonna say he's kind of like the I don't want to say black sheep because that would say that he's not good, but that's not what I mean. I mean like he's kind of the I'm
the loud, boisterous uncle.
Yes, and that like when you're a kid and you go to him, he's the one that's gonna grab you and flip you around in the air and make you want to vomit. You know, not in a bad way, but like he's fun. But no, it's kind of like the boisterous one that you know you're gonna get the straight scoop from. So
yeah, 100%. No, I like what you do, Matt, and I always have. That's I mean, it's why I mean, besides just liking you as a person, enjoy talking to you, but it's why I
really
value. Oh well, let's not get started on that.
I'd love to join you, Matt, but you know, I got a professional facade to keep up.
Nate.
Right. Yeah. So we don't all have the luxury of being so candid as Matt might be. So.
Right.
And the thing is, it's not even that. It's just I just don't care. Like,
right.
Like that's the difference. Like, there's a reason. Like on me, I play by other people's rules. If I am in somebody else's house, I am not going to be breaking their rules. Yeah. People find that dichotomy really weird. I'm like, I'm in my own house. I don't care. Like,
yeah, in my case, it's like, well, you know, you work for a public school system, you might not want to.
Yeah, you can't do what I do. Like,
yeah,
like what I do is like, my job is not listed anywhere.
Yeah,
for a reason.
Yeah, I work for a large corporation that's very much about, you know,
family friendly stuff,
inclusion and family friendly, and let's, you know, roses and puppy dogs and unicorns. So I don't want to do anything to like make someone look at me funny there. So yeah. I like my job. I skip into work, you know, like, yay, I'm going to work today. So that's the kind of job I have.
You're a lucky man. Not many people can say that.
No.
I am paid. The way I see it, I'm quite literally paid to play with toys. Is kind of how I look at it. I mean, they're appliances, so
I get paid to play with Linux all day. Yeah.
See,
good.
You pretty much have. You've got my dream job too. I have lots of dreams.
Linux and Macs too, right, Adam?
I have a MacBook Pro, but that's the only Mac. I just work on Linux servers.
Well, I mean, is the school district you're in all Chromebooks and stuff now?
Mostly, but I'm not user facing, so
I gotcha.
I just do back end infrastructure.
Gotcha.
That's the dream right there. Go hide in a server room somewhere.
Dude, that's all. There's no windows. We're just right there in the data center, like just,
Oh, I used
hacking
to
away on servers, man.
when I couldn't take it anymore, I would just go hide in the server room.
It's funny. It'll do some things to your mental psyche after a while when you're down there with no windows and barely any human contact.
Fans, just the
They're like-
sounds of fans.
Yeah, there are like 5 of you that are down there. You start to fill the time. So yeah.
All right, guys. Well, look, I have kept you long enough. I really appreciate you joining me on this. I would have been talking to you anyway, probably, but
Probably,
you know,
yeah.
So, I don't get enough FaceTime with you though. We get voice chat and Discord and stuff like that. So it's glad we had a chance to. And I hope everybody enjoyed listening to us ramble on about random things. And we'll probably do this more often with this crew. And with that, thank you to everyone in chat who joined us. And thanks again to you guys. And everyone have a fantastic evening. Take care, everyone. Good night.